and welcome to the first Blast R6 Major. And it's happening on their home turf in Copenhagen, Denmark. Today marks the beginning of Phase 1, where we have 16 teams in total competing for the final 8 spots to be heading into the second phase of this major. The teams are already unplugged into play, but first of all, let's have a look at the groups and what we can be expecting. Starting off with Group A, we have M&M, as well as Falcons, Sandbox Gaming, and Furry. Group B has Ninjas in Pajamas, 6 Karma, Space Station Gaming, Elevate. Group C, Northeption, Reven, Sonics, and I mean, we also got Group D. There's a whole lot of teams, and we all know that they're here to compete, to try and go forward. So have a look at the bracket to see what we can expect in terms of the games that are gonna be played. We're gonna be starting off with a best of 1. It's a double elimination bracket, so even though you snooze, you're not out just yet because you still have a chance in a best of 3 to try and crawl it through. It does mean that you have a lot more games to play, but also a lot more siege. So you know what, guys? That's exactly what we signed up for. I hope you guys are just as excited as we are. But first, let's have a little breather, a little break, and we'll be back shortly. We have 4 best of 1s and 2 best of 3s heading your way today, so that means there's a whole lot of siege. It's jam-packed, and honestly, I could not stand here by myself and do everything because, yeah, that's not how it works. We actually have some smart people that are going to be able to help us walk through it, and this time around we have Lynx and Blue. I know I called you guys smart.
That's gonna go straight to my head. I'm not gonna lie to you. I am.
It was a joke.
That's made my.
Yeah, sorry.
Got him.
Got him. Yeah, he's Oliver. How are you guys feeling about today?
Pretty good. I think it's going to be some good matches, especially this first one to start off. We got 2 new teams as far as the circuit is concerned, so I'm really excited to see how they're going to face off against each other. Yeah, I mean, Northeption not actually making a major before this game. A new addition, at least on the Japanese side of things, to a 6 major. And then, of course, we have Reven from Latin America, who have also, as a region, not made a major before outside of Brazil. Being the first Mexican team, so I'm excited of the fact that we get to see some new faces here.
See, I said it. You're kind of smart sometimes. You gotta take it away and do a little bit more of analysis.
I'll try my best.
All right, well, that's going to take us into our pregame segment now, ladies and gentlemen, as we are just about ready to get started with the first matchup of the tournament here. Keep in mind, of course, every single game is here on the main stream. We usually do have a Bravo stream for these types of tournaments, but not going to be the case, as we'll all be live here on the main stream. Like we said, though, it's Northeption up against Reven, which should be an interesting matchup. Northeption placing 2nd in the Japan League during the most recent sprint, and Reven qualifying through the LCQs in the Latin American region as well. Reven definitely the more interesting kind of story here when we look at the fact that it's 4 EU players and 1 American as well that I think has been playing in Mexico for about a year or so now.
Yeah, Rath's been in the Mexico League, you know, formerly MXPL, now the LATAM League, for about 2 years now. And he's been joined by the likes of, you know, Draw, Runner, but I think a lot of people, Joe is the player that they'll be most acquainted with. You know, played for Navi years and years ago, fumbled around in EUCL, and has now made his way to the LATAM League and now made his way to the Copenhagen Major. But Northeption don't have an uninteresting story either. In the history of Rainbow Six, we've had 3 Japanese teams qualify for majors, and none of them are here. CAG especially, I think, has surprised a lot of people by underperforming in the regular season. So we have Scars, we have Varel, and right now we have Northeption, who, as you said, 2nd seed, falling to Scars, but still making it to Phase 1.
Northeption have been on the kind of come up a little bit over the past few months as well, just barely missing qualification for SI a few months back, and then improving their performance slowly but surely since then to now actually make it through and qualify here by placing 2nd in the Japan League. Now, of course, making their way to the major. We have to see if they're going to be up for the challenge against Reven. Like we said, has that very interesting story of just importing a lot of players from EU, so you have a lot of experience being mixed in there from places like UCL, as well as I think one of them played in EUL during 2020, so a few years back there as well. Quite a bit of experience still to be spread amongst that team, so we're going to have to see how they face off against each other. It's very much a trial by fire for both teams as far as international competition is concerned. It'll be a best of 1 to start things out here.
Well, yeah, and a best of 1, and as Jenny mentioned earlier, it is a double elim bracket, so if you move down, you play a best of 3, but if you lose that best of of 3, you're out. So there are some teams that if they lose both their games today, they might say goodbye to us very early for the Copenhagen Major. Could be Northeption, could be Reven, but I doubt either team wants to be in anywhere close to that spot. If you win 2 best of 1s, if Northeption or Reven does, they'll make it to phase 2. They'll just have to hope they end up making it. And I definitely think, at least me personally, both these teams have a good shot at winning this. I'm feeling a little bit biased towards Northeption personally, at least for how I think they might win.
It's going to be the same for me. I think Northeption just has a little bit more of a kind of solid package going on for themselves right now compared to what we saw out of Reven, who struggled a little bit inside of those LCQs in order to make it forward. But like we said before, we could be surprised with it. There's a very good chance for this matchup to go either way, especially with the nature of it being a best of 1, and especially once we get to see the map veto as well. Just once we get to talk about that a little bit more, I think the map is going to play into this one pretty heavily in terms of why this matchup may end up being relatively even between these two teams.
I wonder where we're gonna go, because that's my main question. Because both these teams, especially Reven, have talked about that. They definitely like to focus more on their gameplay inside of the server, don't focus as much on prep. And for Northeption, at least me personally, they're a bit more of an unknown quantity in that regard. I think the map could be a big surprise for us, and we actually have the map veto ready. So if we want to take a look at it, where are we going, boys?
And it looks like we're going to be heading to Oregon for map number 1. It's a Siege Classic as far as everyone is concerned, so it's not going to be too surprising to see that being brought out immediately. That also means it'll be relatively comfortable, I think, for both of these teams. That plays into what Lix was mentioning before, where this should, in theory, because of that, kind of be a close matchup between these two teams.
Yeah, even if a team has a 1-2 record or a 2-1 record, even a flawless record on Oregon, this is a map that everybody plays. It's going to be in everybody's pool, and they're going to be to some degree comfortable on it. Maybe it's not their favorite map. Hell, maybe they'll even ban it out first or second in a best of 1, but it's never really going to be somebody's permaban, and if it is, it's just out of personal preference, not because they're not prepared on it. However, this is a little bit worrying for Reven, not because, they're not practiced on Oregon, but especially on the attack. They're a very aggressive team. They like to send Joe in by himself, and it's hard to get away with aggressive plays on Oregon. You're often funneled down hallways or funneled down stairwells, and if that's the same strategy they go with and they just send Joe against Northeption, he's going to die, and they're going to be down in a 4v5 very early on.
It's difficult to play that way versus Northeption, too, because if they try to play this similarly to how they played it against Scars during the finals of the Japan League where they qualified for this event, it's going to be very weird contending against kind of the roam game that we're more than likely going to see Northeption bring out on their defensive side. They play a very slow, but at the same time, very active roam, like, for instance, having a player hide out inside of, like, small tower and things like that when they're playing on their tertiary site, but then very careful with their timing of when that player actually jumps into action. They try to extend it as long as possible and just bait out all of that time. So it's going to be a little bit difficult to play a very front-focused strategy if you're coming into this one as Reven on the attack, which I believe is going to end up being the case. They'll end up starting out on that side when we get into the game, it looks like.
And going off that point that you just said, how Northeption, as opposed to some teams on Oregon who typically will just bunker on the site, especially on a site like Basement, they do like to go for some of those extensions up to the middle floor or even the top floor in some cases. A player like Draw, who I did a podcast recently with Super, not to plug, myself, but Fresh mentioned that Draw is a player that he thinks a lot of you at home should pay attention to, because even though Joe might be the most well-known player on this team, Draw is a very, very talented player coming out of the T2 scene in Europe, and he plays that flex position, that Nook operator, and often, if you're struggling to clear out an extension, or if you're in a 4v5 and you are going into that clear in a man disadvantage, it's players like Draw who are on that flex who can maybe hit a lurk in the mid-round that can turn what is basically just banging your head against the wall into a winnable round, even if you're starting at a disadvantage.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to be getting into it here. As you can see, in just under a minute now, our teams are getting prepared to jump into the matchups. Let's get ourselves ready for it. Like we talked about before, it's a best of 1, no elimination contention just yet, but this is a very, very tough group draw situation, as we've now shifted over to GSL groups with the new format, meaning that if you lose this one matchup, one more best of 3 could potentially send you home here on the very first day of plays. Teams have to keep their wits about them and make sure they focus up for this first matchup, as it can determine quite heavily your trajectory for the next few days at a minimum.
And it'll require some mental adjustment from these players as well. Again, if you didn't tune into the majors last year, you had about 6 best of 1s, and you could drop 1 or 2 before you ended up actually making it to the next phase of the major. Here, like you said, lose a best of 1, and you're on a do or die game. And this could be treated as do or die right now, whether you're a Northeption or a Reven fan. Definitely one of the more closer games that we'll have in these groups, both from, or at least regions that were either lumped into other regions previously, now their own thing. Both of them will try to prove themselves, not only as teams, but also as representatives of their regions.
As we can see here, some of the players on the side. Now, we'll get our first ban in from Northeption, and it's going to lean towards Nook.
Yep.
Nook has obviously been seeing a lot of play, specifically here on Oregon, to have that sort of solo flank and surprise capability to jump onto any more aggressively lean defense. Now going to be knocked out of play. This is a pretty expected ban, too. Ying's been incredibly popular for a long time here on this map, and now has seen even more play as of late, so it makes perfect sense to ban her out here.
Especially on Oregon, if you're gonna say bunker on basement and just try to hold angles on the site, Ying can completely throw your setup out of whack. If you're Reven and if you go to the defense eventually, you're not gonna want to worry about any of those Candelas moving into play. A zombie ban coming out from Reven as well. This is their preferred defensive operator. I think out of like 16 operator ban phases they've gone to, this is 14 of their 16 defensive bans. So definitely favoring that Azami over the Valkyrie. And speaking of the Valkyrie, that's Northeption's preferred defensive ban. And will they go for it?
Ooh,
no, they will not. They'll ban the Kapkan. Interestingly enough, I will say this. Joe, I've mentioned earlier, is notorious for kind of running in by himself in the early round. Kapkan might actually, or a Kapkan ban might actually be a bit of a buff to Reven's playstyle starting on the attack.
Yeah, we'll have to see how they try to utilize it. The ban itself, just looking at it from a normal sense, though, does make sense in the fact that, again, much like a lot of the other operators in the pool, we've been seeing an increased amount of play out of Kapkan. He can be very annoying if you end up in a situation where you're going for all these very low-timed executes, so we'll have to see how the ban potentially changes things up here. If we're seeing Reven get away with those late-round executes, that may be a mistake coming in from Northeption's side if they wanted to potentially use that. But at the same time, if they're thinking, we never really want to incorporate him into our lineup, we can just chuck him out so that we at least don't have to deal with that when we go into the second half. Either way, though, we are live with the matchup now as we head into the first round. We're already going to see some interesting stuff come out from Northeption. I was talking with you about this as well in the pregame. They like to go for a pretty aggressive roam from time to time on their basement holds, which is not something we tend to generally see from a global perspective.
Oh, no.
This will be really interesting to see how Northeption play this out now against a team from another region.
Now, part of the reason that you don't often see extensions on basement, it's not even that the strats are necessarily bad, it's just you have so much of what you already need on the bottom floor itself. You put someone maybe by the laundry machine and inside a pillar, and you can contest most of the entryways, or at least the stairwells, down into the bomb site. And because of how much the attack needs to open, especially those hatches, the defense's opportunities to rotate their utility. But look at this, Joe already creeping down laundry stairs. It's barricaded, so they gotta break it open. Yukiz immediately pops the head on Joe. 5v4 very early on. I mentioned Joe might be an early death, but even I'm a bit surprised at how quick this one's going.
Sam's gonna be in a bit of trouble too here, so he gets forced back early because of the toxic babe situation. Nicely done from Favor there to quickly force that back. Stem the tide of this aggression before it goes too far out of Northeption's control. Reven are going to realize this is a bit more complicated than first appeared, so they'll slow things down a little bit now as well, but still very much on the hunt. As we're following Draw right now on the sledge, going for a big rapid. He may very well slam a kill in here as well. Gonna find it. Sauchan, unfortunately, none the wiser to that situation, so we'll get spotted out by it. Gets tripped up a little bit here by the hologram, but thankfully no consequences. That is, he's in a pretty safe position. Nina, though, on the flight. This is the big player for Northeption, so we're looking for some big plays throughout the course of this round, but just not gonna happen as Runner establishes a proper cutoff and takes down Nina in the process.
A very hectic attack and a rush completely thwarted by the defense, but Northeption are now the ones caught off guard. The castle goes to retake top floor, but the attack, while pulling out from that rush, has now taken some decent control of the middle floor and cut any rotation or any flank over on that white stair side. It's the big tower side that is now safer for the defense, and that's where Shureep is trying to contest and find some angles against the attacking team. And now Reven are adapting. They've recognized the opportunity they have with a minute 20 left. They can start opening freezer, they can start opening laundry. Meeting might take a little bit more work and maybe some more droning as well to make sure that nobody from Northeption is actually over by those stairs. But Shureep is pushing forward. Now they do have to be careful. A minute left, and especially with Fabar on low HP. Somebody on the defense has got to make a play lest the attack gain even more ground with the final minute.
Should continue to try and stem the tide here with that final minute remaining. Shureep gonna try and go for an aggressive play inside of Meeting. It has the lineup for it as well. Sam gets his head cut off, forced back deeper into the play. Now as Reven need to reanalyze things. They're in even numbers, and there's still that toxic babe holding things back. Thankfully, the final one just now expiring from Favor, so it should be a clean push from Wrath. No secondary phone call available, though, for Wrath. Both have already been used at this late phase of the round, so there's gonna be a little bit of a lack for intel. Most of the drones are gone, but they still have a few in the pocket, including at least one or two from either Draw or Wrath. So should be able to get that intel through another means, but getting low on time just may not be able to reckon towards it. You're gonna have to force the issue. Runner gets a clean entry to start things out. It's what we needed to see. Shureep also moves out, though, for the 1-to-1 exchange, but it's not gonna be enough as Runner holds things consistently, and Reven claim the first round.
And Northeption holding a lot of very good positions right there, especially that player pushed up into Freezer in the late round. That could have completely stopped Reven from pushing in. And same with the early round as well. Even though Reven ended up losing the opening engagement, Northeption are holding on to, say, White Stairs or the upstairs position, but then they just simply lose their fights. You have the Jaeger upstairs who's caught on drone. That makes a 5v4, a 4v4 thanks to Draw wrapping around and getting the kill inside of Attic. And in the late round right there, Runner just creeps up Freezer, and that player holding that position is caught looking the wrong way. Those two gunfights brought back a seemingly losable round for Reven, not only stopping the damage dealt by a failed rush, but also in a very late execute in which Reven lacked a lot of control. Now they had it back to a man advantage, and now back to something workable.
Nicely played there by Reven to control the situation, keep the chaos in check, and take control over what was, from their perspective, probably a very weird setup to play against the Northeption, going again for that kind of extended, aggressive roam all the way up to the second floor, playing from the basement. Bit of a treat to see that, but obviously it doesn't pan out too well for Northeption, so we'll have to see if they change the game plan. We've gone to a retry of basement later on in the game. For right now, though, they're moving onward up to the second floor defense. Reven will make a few adjustments as well, specifically the Brava coming in now for Draw to deal with some of those interior site gadgets, such as the Banshees, potentially an Electric Claw as well, that'll help to move things forward a bit more quickly here for Reven's assault.
Or even just acquire a default cam to watch. I mean, one thing that I could think of, for example, maybe just acquiring the Showers cam, make sure that nobody can end up flanking from that position. If you don't want to take control of, say, Kitchen, and you want to focus on other parts of the map, like Master Reven Office or Attic, or even the Armory cam as well, as once you take Trophy, make sure that nobody can flank up main stairs. That allows you to allocate your drones to different positions, either to watch flank or to actively use. Joe, who almost spots somebody playing aggressive inside of the site, but he's focused on the concrete position, and excellent patience from Joe. Not a phrase you often say, but holding that angle, gets the first kill, and Northeption, no real opportunity to trade that one. And with a hack on the Electric Claw as well, this is a great first minute from Reven.
I think that's all three of the charges going for the Brava drone successfully there, nicely played out on the utility usage from him. They'll take some excellent control, and as he mentioned here as well, does open up the walk-in closet wall pretty much easily for the taking, but the next swing from Joe is going to be unsuccessful. Shuri from the defensive side on Northeption ends up winning out the second fight instead, re-equalizing us down to a 4v4, probably causing a little bit of passive play now from Reven as they try to analyze what the best next move is going to be, and of course, all these gadgets still just open for the taking here as they're continuing to be stolen away by Draw. Finally, this one going to get interrupted, though, after only the first charge is used.
To clear that Banshee. But that now means Runner can start creeping on in and take the fight with the player in concrete. Sayochan, a big kill right there, bringing back the man advantage for the defense. Reven's entry is a lot harder. Ooh, Draw unfortunate. Not really aware that the player's still inside of security. That's where Joe died to as well. A little bit of a miscommunication or forgotten intelligence gathered by Reven. Now that leaves Wrath, the only one left outside of the bedroom wall. And sure, Northeption have dropped some gunfights, especially in the last round, but this should be a pretty easy 1v3 to clean up.
Yeah, Wrath unfortunately dealt with much play contention here inside of the 1vx scenario. Gonna try to play it slowly. He still has a full minute after all, so we can take his time on this one. Give Reven a little bit of time to analyze what may have potentially gone wrong inside of the execute itself. But you can see it here from our top-down POV at the top left there. It's just anytime he takes a step into the site, he's going to be stepping into one, if not multiple angles from Northeption. They've set this up pretty much perfectly. They're not taking any risks inside of the 1vx here either, as they need to catch up from the loss on round one here, make sure they stabilize and take the 1-1 scoreline into round three, especially if they're going to end up skipping the second basement play and go for a tertiary site immediately. They need to make sure the score is in the best position possible here. Phone call still available for Rathos, who's going to use it as he tries to sneak around towards White Stairs, where there is a player waiting, and hey, the top White Stairs kill does pay off this time. Not prone, though. But we are going to see that kill come in from the Japanese squad as they do claim the tie point now at 1-1.
Good start from Reven as opposed to their round number one, which started with them entering a man disadvantage. But the mid-round right there was pretty sloppy from the attack. I'm not going to lie to you. Joe just walking up Z seemingly knew that a player might be in security, but caught completely off guard with how aggressive that Smoke or Mute was playing inside of security. Then later on, Draw dies to the very same player in the exact same position. Just the intel for Reven seemed to be very solid in the early round, especially the game sense, just saying, okay, I'll go on this rappel, see if I can get a kill on the player concrete, and it works out. For the mid round though, when they already had a man advantage, you can't be losing advantages like that at this level of play, especially in that fashion, just dying to the same player in the same position.
It's a small hiccup for the time being for Reven, but they've got an immediate chance to correct upon it, depending on how Northeption potentially change up their own style of play here too. Maybe returning to a more traditional hold on the basement, but we'll hold our breath on that until we get a better sense of the setup. They have brought the Goyo into the second basement hold now, which makes me believe they're going to be pulling things back a little bit, given how Reven kind of matched the energy from Northeption with a very aggressive start to their own attack. So Northeption indeed looks like they're still going to be out and about. Once again, we'll be much more contained here to try and make sure that they can play off of the benefits that the basement site provides in and of itself downstairs.
And I think especially for this site, because of how strong that bunker is, it's probably for the best. You don't want to give Reven or players like Draw or Joe the opportunity to get an opening pick, then potentially move further off that advantage. Let them clear out their utility, let them have to coordinate and do things that don't involve getting kills, and that can be sometimes where Reven can struggle against some of these stronger opponents. Not much presence on the top floor beyond Summon Freezer and security. That Goyo does need to be careful, though. He has support and has someone who can help him rotate back inside of Freezer stairs, but he is cut off. He'll have to rotate in front of someone if they're holding that shower's hallway. And Joe could also move into maybe green or even kitchen, open up a hole in the wall to go for the pinch on the Goyo. Now the drone knows. Down goes the Goyo. Excellent intel gathering by Reven, able to take down that Goyo. Now the Warden, like, you're gonna need to fall back.
Sharif just a second or two early there on the Nitro cell, and Draw, the player that takes the majority of damage from it, gets revenge pretty much a few seconds later there. Sharif being brought down now to about a third of his own HP. Having to back away from that situation over at the top of the wide stairs area. Away from that, though, we're going to see quick work of the rest of the hatches being deployed. Now, since we've seen the Hibana brought out by Reven, so they'll open up a pathway into the basement. This is where Northeption, of course, going to be tested a bit more, and even more so now that Draw has claimed second blood. Sharif ends up being taken down outright, is not able to successfully fall back through the freezer, and as a result of that, it's already a 5v3 advantage here for Reven as they look to take a second attack on the basement psychic.
Moving very quickly to fill that gap now that they've entered the 5v3, they can start pressuring Freezer a lot more aggressively, because if somebody from Northeption holds an aggressive position in, say, long run the washing machine, Reven can play the 1v1 and still maintain at least a two-body lead over the defense. Nina contesting the hatch will dodge a frag grenade for the moment, and this is where the round might be made or broken. If they can get a kill on this back tower stairs, which Nina's going for, but the aggression does not pay off. Faber also losing a hell of a lot of damage, only on two players of the defense to try and bring this back.
Northeption trying to fight fire with fire here as they get hyper-aggressive. Sayo-chan getting one more for the team's record, but ultimately still goes down on the trade to Joe. Favart, the only one left alive. It doesn't stay that way for very long as Joe finds a very quick second kill there to end the round, and indeed give over a second successful attack now to Reven as they take the lead once again at 2-1 over their opponents here.
Reven have got what is often considered the minimum on Oregon. They've got those two attacks, and it's on basement as well, so Northeption in a very difficult spot. They've won dorms, which is the secondary site, and still a very good site for the defense, but they've lost basement twice, which is unequivocally the best on this map, and now they have to go to a tertiary bomb site where they have struggled to really get a good defense on the bulwark on this map. They'll go to dining and kitchen as their main one. At least in North America, of course, John, this is the least preferred site that we're used to. Northeption will decide to go as their third attempt now.
Northeption do love to do this nice little extension of small tower, however, so this is expected from them based on their play inside of the Japan League, but it's important to keep in mind these little aggressive extensions they've been going for is, even if we look at last round to the kind of pulled back version of that in the basement, they're still giving over far too many opportunities, it seems, for Reven to get those early entries, and Reven are sinking them every single time. So Northeption are going to be very careful with how they try to play out this aggression now, as it's cost them quite a bit inside of the early round, leaving them without much of a chance to come back. Second round a bit different, because they just played into, for the most part, a default on the upstairs kids site, and that went pretty much swimmingly, so they're going to have to hope for a bit more of a correction this time as they play into this tertiary site and look for another tie point at 2-2.
I'm interested to see if Reven decide to go for the small tower clear, because the utility, at least to clear maybe some of those ADSs, isn't bountiful. Of course, they have those frag grenades and they have those EMPs. So if they land where those ADSs are, that'll work out. But ooh, poor droning, not poor refrag game though, as Sharif takes down Joe. That does mean Reven still get the trade with Runner very close behind. That probably favors Northeption though. You've lost the Alibi, who's already placed all of our utility and taken down 2 of the 4 frag grenades that Reven have. So even though Sharif dies and you don't get a man advantage, that's some important utility taken off the board.
Runner will continue to try and carve through the rest of the second floor setup, which, as you can see, is quite prevalent still for Northeption. Both Nina and one additional member of this team playing up here, but Nina, the aggressive peek on the big window, claims one, nearly lines up a second there. If the peek was just a bit more aggressive from Runner, might have been able to take a second head off, but not going to find it so early. Northeption, regardless, will take back the advantage. That's caused Reven to freeze, for at least for a few seconds here, as they try to figure out what to do next. The phone call is the immediate reaction to it, although it's not necessarily giving them the winning info that they would need to claim the next kill. Sam will ultimately find it, though, catching Nina on the rotate back over to the hatch drop from inside of Kids.
That's such a big kill for Reven. With their 2 nade players gone, their only way to really clear these positions was try and go play for a trade, but they're in a man disadvantage. How will they do it? But the other way is Northeption give them an opportunity, which they're now being presented with even more. The top 4 players are now completely dealt with. The thing Northeption had remaining to waste even more time is gone. Reven have a minute and 15 and a man advantage, not even necessarily to find these remaining players, but just to move into the site and get enough coverage to put the bomb down.
Runner will commit himself to the drop inside of Mina. Keep in mind, of course, playing into the kitchen site right now, so not full access just yet. Sayochan will immediately counter out some of that aggression as he catches Wrath, trying to go for the long haul control. Brings us back down onto even numbers, and Reven starting to run out of time a little bit here as we're down to the final 50 seconds of play. No immediate path forward here either. As you'll notice, the 2 Selmas going back over onto the kitchen wall. There was a mute jammer, it looks like, blocking that, so they're not going to be able to pop that open. They'll be forced to try and play things around the other side. They'll see if they can sneak in this impact to make the Selmas work, and indeed they will. So Sam will get back his angle over here directly into the kitchen. That'll cause at least 1 player to rotate on the Northeption side. But as you can see here, the Toxic Babes only just now being triggered. That was a second one coming out right there. So Sayochan still has 1 more to waste out an additional 10 seconds. And there it is right there. Which will take us down to right around the 10-second mark. Sam trying to play more so for the angle here. So relying on Runner to get into proper positioning to swing the site. But you can see the Toxic Babe has extended over in that direction on top of the defender inside of security itself. Runner does make that entry, however, so it is still working out here. Sayochan finally counters and goes down to the ground for 1 final pump of the shotgun to close this one out for the defense.
Very close round by Northeption. They are giving so many opportunities away to Reven that are allowing the attack to rejoin the game, to recover what is seemingly a lost round. That top floor clear is a big example of that. They go 1 for 1, but a trade that favors the defense in actuality, even though they don't get a 5v4. But then the 2 players sitting in dorms rotate, or one of them at least, rotates in front of big window right here. And that makes it clear a lot more feasible. Runner also, that's not really Northeption giving up a kill. That's Runner getting some good timing going his way, because as Reven go for the flood, the security player makes the decision to try and deal with the player walking in. Runner just outmaneuvers him, but Northeption gotta be careful. Even though they won that round, you can't be giving opportunities away to Reven, especially with Runner 8-2 right now.
Northeption thankfully having a little bit of a sigh of relief since they haven't locked the initial site they won once again. So they can try to chain these 2 sites together here, see if they can take a little bit of a lead for themselves, at least try to go for the 4-2 scoreline, which will still be relatively okay for them at the end of the day if they're able to rebound for a pretty successful early opening of this game from Reven, taking 2 separate attacks on the basement site. Struggling outside of that one, though, maybe just in closing out inside of these late round situations, but this site was the cleanest one we had seen by far from Northeption, so we'll see if that'll be the case once again. Another aggressive run out here from Nina, and it does get it down. Unfortunately, not going to be able to get the full package here. Drell should be able to crawl back over behind the van and have a teammate bring him back up.
Still very nice, though. One of the 3 main frontline players for Reven now gone. 2 nades also, if you just land 1 bullet that you don't have to worry about anymore. And with how aggressive Joe is, if he ends up losing or gaining another opening death for his team, that could be both the nades gone, depending on how this round transpires. They've already made their way into trophies, so some good control established, but he's not on that window anymore. He's sitting in the doorway, and this is a lot, well, maybe easier to challenge, or at least a lot harder to take a gunfight, or a favorable gunfight for Joe specifically. But they've used those EMPs. They've at least tried to open up the wall, but the impact trick has not been dealt with. Nina's also got that kill on draw. They finished it off and taken down Sam as well. That's your remaining exothermic done and dusted.
Definitely a solid side setup once again coming in here from Northeption. Sayochan striking on an aggressive swing too, this time against Joe. He's been one of the leading players, but Runner is the leading man at the moment for Reven as he claims yet another kill. Still leading the charge for the overall server at 9-2, with the second highest being Shureep there at 7-3. Runner, we'll see if he can make things any better up against a pretty tough situation here. He does still have the support of Wrath, of course, there on the Thatcher, but regardless, for both of them, this is a tough break to try and make work here now from the 2v4 perspective. Case is down on the ground as well. I don't believe that this wall, nope, was never even open, so Wrath's gonna have to go for the hard peek over by the trophy doorway, which is very heavily defended. A good pre-fire there from Runner. The angle just doesn't line up, unfortunately, with the floorboards or something else blocking his way up on top.
Does spot one player downstairs, but loses the fight. Unfortunate for Wrath. That leaves Runner, the man of the hour, the man of the best of one so far, to recover diffuser, maybe, or at least just get 4 kills. Seemingly an unlikely position. Northeption, of course, did see someone get aggressive down below, but now they've won the fight. They're all standing stagnant in their positions, which is what you should do here. No need to throw it, no need to get too aggressive. Especially, that was for the early round. Northeption taking some very, very early engagements against Reven that paid off in spades. Nothing really to worry about once they got those first 2 kills, and especially once they took down the Thermite at that. So Runner's basically going through the motions and fulfilling a prophecy that was said about 30 seconds into this round.
Not much, like we said before, that he can really posture towards with it being a 1v4. Just trying to work this to the best of his own capabilities. Northeption giving us a great show on that round, though, showing us what they can do when those challenges are not really countered out by the attackers we've been seeing for some of the previous rounds. They've been great at countering out some of those aggressive peaks like we saw from the window, but Northeption having much more control over it this time, having angles that favor them a heck of a lot more than it was Nina that did most of the heavy lifting there inside of the early round itself, picking up 2 of those right from the beginning of it, included that initial down that obviously was translated later on against the Sledge.
Yeah, that C4 kill is just a big one. I mean, that presence in Classroom is not even really known from Reven. That's a big, big oversight. It seems like they know what they want to do. They know what areas of the map they want to take, but that's all they really focus on. They're not really gathering a lot of that secondary intel or keeping watch on positions like Classroom, and if they are, they're still letting players rotate in and then not just make, you know, impactless plays or run in and get fought off. No, that's a C4 on your Thermite. That's your entire attacking strategy done and dusted at that point. But thankfully for Reven, I can't believe I'm saying this, we're going back to basement. This is the only site that Northeption have not won so far, and they've gone to it twice. So Reven still have a very good opportunity, at least given the precedent, to end this 3-3.
I do think, again, that some of these wins from Reven have been because of the decisions that Northeption have made. They presented way more opportunities to Reven than may have necessarily needed to give them. So we'll see once more if Northeption is able to kind of make the adjustments they need to make in order to potentially have a bit more of a successful round. But it seems like, once again, quite an aggressive stance being put out by them as we have the Goyo playing small tower, trying to counter out the initial clear here. Time just a little bit off for that. And here's the problem. Once again, Nina, who is roaming upstairs on the 2nd floor, gets caught out by Wrath, I believe on a pre-fire, clearing out a barricade. As a result of that, just like the previous 2 basement holds here, Northeption are going to have to work from the back foot on this one to try and come back into the round.
That's a shame as well. With how seemingly early round focused Reven's drones have been, if that Solus had survived, could have seen a lot of damage done to Reven's mid-round game, but the damage is all done to Northeption. Runner getting the 3rd kill for the attack, the 4th kill going their way as well. 45 seconds in, boys. The round is done. The half is over. It's 3-3, even between Reven and Northeption at the side swap.
So as we head into the second half, for me, again, I got to put some, point out some issues here for Northeption. The fact that, in my opinion, they were their worst enemy inside of that half, giving over, especially in the early round, far too many opportunities for Reven to entry, especially on their basement holds.
And even the mid-round and the late round as well. I mean, that was their biggest problems on basement, is I think they feel like they need to do more than they actually need to defend basement properly. Take, say, on Freezer, you have that position, you're playing aggressively, seemingly a little indecisive on what angle he wants to hold or what he wants to prioritize, or even going further back into that 2nd basement round, having a Goyo sit inside of security. Sure, he's got someone helping him on Freezer stairs, but that's a very easy position to pinch for the attack. I think Northeption may be overcomplicating things for themselves, and a 3-3 half isn't bad, but there was potential for a 4-2, even a 5-1 if some individual decisions had simply been made differently.
We'll see if they can still rebound from that, as they've had a very successful attacking side in their past games as well. So looking to try and correct on the mistakes that may have been made inside of the first half here in order to still come out on top of this first game. Keep in mind, like I said before, very important that you win this initial matchup. This is going to be the only best of one. I believe these teams will end up playing into, at least for this phase of the tournament. After this, whether they win or lose, it's all best of 3s. But if they lose this one, their very next match is potentially for elimination. So they're going to have to be very, very careful here. Getting that win does give you that kind of extra life, as it were. And Joe nearly taking away one of those lives from Northeption right at the beginning of the round. But much like a lot of the pre-fire attempts we've seen work out, it just hasn't landed. The 2nd peak is much better from Joe, though, as he's able to take down Nina once again here at the beginning of round 7.
And Nina, the star player on Northeption, by far and away the player seen the most talk about how powerful his entry game, or just how powerful his mechanical skill can be. So talking about him, it's not even the nades that are gone. It's just the fact that he's no longer holding a gun and that he's got to be on drones for the remainder of the round. Players like Yukiz or Shuri, they might have to pick up the slack. Dokkaebi call goes out, so they know Joe's still roaming around on this floor. But it's the smart read and the smart decision by Reven. They've got the opening pick. It's a basement defense. Just pull back. Northeption are still going to spend the subsequent minute or minute and a half opening up hatches, gaining intel, clearing out utility, using some of their Rotero drones or some of their remaining frag grenades. You don't need to give them opportunities to make this a 4v4 or 4v3 if things were to really go poorly. Just let them play their game because it's going to take most of the round.
Once again, Northeption playing this slowly here due to the deficit that was built upon them a few seconds prior. The Shuri only just now starting to move in and take out the utility pieces that are sitting on the inside of construction. Thankfully, it's pretty minimal in here. I don't believe we have the extended shield out, right? No, we don't. And on top of that, we've only got the one additional Goyo canister sitting here in the corner. Shuri's going to bypass that, though, and move forward to take out something else. That may have just been a standard drone moving forward. Either way, though, he's moving up now, trying to take better control. And the magnet that he took out with his initial Rotero drone has already been replaced, that I saw there real quickly, too, from Reven. So Northeption not having the best of luck right now in terms of opening up that pathway. We can see the X-Kairos does go off successfully, though, onto the inside corner of the E-wall. So that at least opens up that overwatch option from the players that end up dropping. They can keep one up on top, kind of lock a Wrath into a corner here, prevent him from getting hyper-aggressive. About to see that aggression come through from Northeption, though. Is Wrath ready for the challenge? Indeed he is, at least for the first player that comes up against him. Draw comes in for the assist. Sam will be lost elsewhere on the site. But the good news is Wrath, as well as Draw, still have great control over the situation, so they take quick control of this first round of the second half.
Very solid team play and decision-making right there, not only from Wrath, but also just Reven as a whole. Northeption decide that, okay, we've lost the opening advantage, moving down Freezer, moving down Laundry, we're gonna expose ourselves to too many angles, let's just try to take a fight on big tower stairs. But no real use of the flashes, unfortunately. It's not entirely their fault. Those magnets still remain a menace, going well into that execute from Northeption. So even had they tossed out as much of their utility as possible, it was gonna be likely it would have just been caught in the end, no matter what they tried to do. Northeption, an admirable attempt, but Reven simply had more utility and the advantage. So once Northeption went in for their best possible execute, Reven could just play those trades, and they didn't even really need to in the end.
Reven taking solid control there on round number one. So on the warpath towards victory here now. If they can complete the set and do one more basement hold, that'll be it. And they would take control of this first matchup here. So we'll have to see now as Northeption tries to make up for things. A potential pause could be in the cards for them too if they don't get things together in the next round or two. So let's take a look at their second attack. Now going to be up against obviously kind of the second floor hold here from Reven. Pretty expected number of changes to come in from Reven as well. So they're going to triple down on the nade mitigation here as we'll have the full set. Jaeger as well as the Wamai and the laser gates coming in there from Wrath as well.
I think it's a very good decision based on the lineup that Reven saw, but also the lack of utility, especially projectiles they saw from Northeption. I mean, the flashes were either sucked up or weren't really used to clear Wrath out of pillar. Their nade player died early, so if they can get a kill on that entry, take down Yukiz or Shuri, unfortunately not happening today. Nina gets the better of Joe in round 8 as opposed to round 7. Still, though, not a lot of active utility lost by Reven. Those ADSs will persist. And the same thing is true. If you do end up taking down one of those nade players, it could be big, but they've at least taken down a player. Nina, that star fragger on Northeption, down 2 rounds in a row.
Bit of a trap counter working out there pretty well from Reven as they hear the rappel noise from Nina heading up to that second floor window, knows that it's going to expose him when he goes back down. So thankfully they had a second member roaming around on that first floor there and able to reposition him by classroom window where Joe had died. Draw, though, in a bit of a tough situation here as he's trying to turn this fight around against Shuri. Unfortunately, Draw brought far too low, though. Only had that little sliver of HP to peak with, so still ends up losing the battle, but gets some of the HP that was lost from him back onto Shuri there towards the end of it as he knocks out just short of about half of his HP.
Speaking of which, Shurip on that secondary entry also alongside Nina. Very well-renowned player inside of Japan, though a little bit more inconsistent than Nina. Some days he's very hot, some days he's very cold. Today, though, he's 10-5, by far and away the best performer on Northeption. So right now, one player 0-7, another player 1-5. Shurip able to salvage this and get an advantage for Northeption. Moving under a minute 30, we'll see a movement over towards Attic to try and open up an angle this way. But no movement over by Master Bedroom. That could be a problem. Even if they have someone big window, which they do, to apply some release pressure, they'd still only really be pushing in through concrete or through the dorms rotate, and the big window player can only help so much from that angle. Sayoshan is banking on getting a kill from someone in this rotate, getting a little bit lazy or a little bit unaware inside of the site.
Rest of Northeption trying to group up for the first big push towards the site itself. Under a minute to play into now, so running low on time to make that happen. Shroop just gonna go for the default opening here above him. Nothing to be found inside of that, obviously, as you guys can see from the silhouettes. He just wants the POV, I think, more than anything right now. He's gonna try to stay down below and play this out a little bit longer here, hoping to potentially catch one or two players as the rest of his team tries to bargain for positioning by big window, as well as eventually with a push up through whites. There's here a lot of intel actually being bled out for Shurik there as the Gemini gets very deep into the sites and knows the exact positions of Sam. May have gotten a glimpse to the player that's rotating in between Attic and the current room that Sam's in as well. So a lot to play on there, but they do need that secondary angle to play off. But Shroop will get a little bit of intel if he saw the laser, which I definitely believe he did. And will now move in to excel and picking up that kill. Problem is, Sam picked up 2 response kills, and we're now pretty much out of time. Wrath shuts down the push from Shurik, and the last player here, Yukiz, gets away with one into the 1v1 itself, but Sam still controls it for Reven as they sit just a few rounds away from victory now.
Also, the first site Reven have won, that was not basement.
True.
On 2 different halves. Now they've won it to go up 5-3, and that was a very winnable round for Reven that they ended up winning. Northeption had the control they needed, but they just sort of stopped. And Reven had some useful angles, albeit the bare minimum. They had someone holding big window. They had someone who could contest either the trophy walk-in or the attic walk-up, or even white, depending on where they wanted to reposition, and a third player at site to aid either one of those positions as well. So Northeption, what they needed to do there was hit it. Recognize the control they had, move up white stairs, move in through big window, and try to play the trade on the player inside of dorms, but they let indecision take them, and the players on the attack just ended up pushing some solo angles, not really playing off each other, and gave Reven the 3v4.
That has been a characteristic issue for them inside of the Japan League games as well. One at least that I happened to watch last night and getting prepared for this game today is the fact that they have great entry power when they're able to showcase it with players like Nina finding the entry against Joe, but then they tend to slow things down a little bit too much as they get closer to the site. And as you were mentioning, they sometimes end up floundering the advantage they may have when it comes to the actual site execute time. So we'll have to see if they catch on to that and try to maybe speed things up a little bit if they end up in a similar position in these future rounds. If not, Reven's going to certainly take back all that control, especially here on Oregon. They are given the opportunity to do so. Tertiary site now for Reven, so hopefully a good opportunity for Northeption to try and close the gap a little bit and prevent an outright map and match point from being claimed this early on.
Interesting. So we're going to see a quick execute from Northeption. The Amaro does not have the diffuser. That's a player stationed over by Garage or on the southern side of the map right now, but Shui may be planning to send it up through that meeting hatch, acquire some quick control, or cause chaos on the site. Now it seems they're pulling back. I thought they were going to move in quick, but now basically Northeption are all over the map at the moment. So unclear whether Sharif is going to go up that hatch or even where Northeption are going to push from. They're all spread out at the moment.
Phone call has gone in early from Northeption. And as you can see, Sharif has got the intel on a backstairs player. We'll see if he can get the successful sneak, but no, the crosshair is aimed too high. Joe gets the first peek of it. As it will swing out and knock out Sharif, first kill of the round once again to our defenders here on Reven. As Nina, or another player from Northeption, tries to pull a very similar move that we just saw from Sharif. I think he's a little bit slow on the reaction though. Unless Draw continues to maintain this position. Not necessarily going to line up for an opportunity, but here we go through the paling. Yukiz has lost a little bit. There ends up being a 1-to-1 exchange, but Runner gets the player advantage back for Reven with his kill against Nina a few seconds afterwards. Yukiz now taking up positioning just on the inside of Cafeteria here as well, preventing the run up with that air jab. The swing may come in from Reven. They hold it back at the last second as they hear that breach going through, so don't want to challenge that in this scenario here. Still a 2v4 attempted to be worked right now by Northeption. And unfortunately, the entry angle that they made for themselves is so brutal when you consider that hatch up on top. So Joe's just going to go for the outright peek, take full control over this situation, and put that map and match point up on the board for his squad.
4 rounds in a row, 3 defenses, all of their defenses so far in a row. Reven about to send Northeption down to the loser's bracket, or Northeption will have to play for their lives if they don't win 3 rounds in a row on the attack, which so far it seemed a little difficult to do. Reven take the timeout? Really?
Bit of a weird one, but it definitely seems like that's the case. So Reven, once again, icing the kicker a little bit here, making absolutely sure their next site defense is going to be set up the way they need it to. They have the pause, so they might as well use it, I guess. But yeah, when you're on a roll like this, it is a little bit strange to see them opting to go for the pause at this point. But a little bit of a present, I guess, to Northeption, maybe giving them the hint. It's like, hey, guys, you might want to figure out your stuff for this next round.
Yeah, Northeption also have a timeout. Like,
I mean, true, yeah. Yes, to correct.
Okay.
That was actually Northeption's time.
I was about to say. I was like, Northeption, come on. Like, you're 6-3 down 3 attacking rounds on Oregon. Surely you don't let your opponent take the attack timeout. But yeah, it was Northeption that took the timeout. So we're all good. No need to panic. Still think it might be a little bit late. Maybe should have taken it after that dorms round when you went down 5-3, because now you can fix this attack, sure. And if you win basement, that is a pretty good omen to go forward, I will say. But it's still only just one defense needed by Reven. One round where things almost go Northeption's way, but maybe draw clutches a 1v3, or they trade back an important opening duel. And that's the best of one done.
Yep, it is all or nothing from this point forward here for Northeption. 3 rounds in a row, otherwise Reven takes the game outright. And even those 3 rounds in a row don't necessarily guarantee a Northeption win, mind you. That just gets us to overtime. So still a bit more work to be done even beyond that as well. But that's the next point where Northeption would be given an additional round to lose. So let's see what the plan is going to be. It's a little bit different here, especially if you look towards Shurep, as he is going to be bringing in the Monty to play things out on this round. And Joe, a very aggressive drone kill here to start the round out as well. Knew it was in the corner, so might as well get rid of it.
Bro said I could play Solus and do that exact thing, or I could play Warden with a better gun and do that exact thing. Go for it.
Swing out and take care of that real quick. Thankfully, no one from Northeption anywhere close to being able to take advantage upon that. Still way too early in the spawn for them. Nina's sneaking the Twitch drone forward, but being a little bit cautious. Doesn't want to send it around the corner if someone is waiting for it. Joe quickly turns tail and runs down the stairs, though, when he notices that there is going to be a Monty pushing things here in Big Tower. So that's going to be very quick Big Tower control going over towards Northeption. Not going to be the end of all the aggressive shenanigans maybe getting out of Reven, though. They've taken a bit of a page out of Northeption this time, as you can see. They have quite a bit of an active roam over towards Freezer Stairs and at the bottom of Classroom Steps as well here. Runner gives up the ghost, though, with those shots. So we'll need to begin quickly negotiating a rotate back downstairs. However, Nina's here, but Runner gets the better out of it anyway. Runner down to a sliver of HP as well from that one. Just barely somehow turns that fight around against Nina.
Not the roaming Mira. Surely not the roaming Mira. On 1 HP as well. This is not a great omen for Northeption. Still have over half the round to go, but only just now opening up these hatches. I believe a C4 was just sent out by the defense, one that misses. Now one player that goes down as well. That's Joe taken off the board, and with Runner on low HP, he's playing back inside of the site, but if somehow Northeption can find him, or even find another kill on, say, this player inside of Long, could make this a 4v3 and then a winnable round. The Montaigne is pushed very far down, but is very separated from the rest of his team, and unshielding a little bit too aggressively for my liking. The rest of Northeption is going to need to catch up and flood into Pillar soon, or else Reven will probably pinch this guy.
The Montaigne being played so actively right now. He's moved all the way from pillar to elbow here. The Toxic Babe in its face, and as well, he's going to pop it. That'll finally force him back. He'll just follow it through, stack as much damage onto the Montaigne as he can, and this is the more important part. Give the room needed to get this reinforcement down and close the jaws shut on this attack, making the situation very awkward for Northeption. As you can see, they do not have a proper angle of attack now as they try to open up a second one inside of E. Immediately, a Nitro moves forward. Now, Troll and the rest of the squad have had a large issue taking out this Monty, but they've finally completed the task by using those Goyo canisters. He goes down. Favar, though, has been able to insert himself through E and has found the counter on to Draw. So Northeption still very much in this round, and as a result, still in this game. Only 25 seconds to try and make this work. First plant attempt coming in now. Runner goes for the peek and drops the planter. Doesn't need to stay out for that. And with one more kill, they'll seal the deal.
With that done and dusted, Reven move on to the next BL1. Northeption down to the lower bracket. We have a break coming up and more matches right after this.
And welcome back once again, ladies and gentlemen, to the Copenhagen Major, the first major under the new ecosystem for this year of Rainbow Six. And what an interesting result we just had from our very first match. Northeption giving us some interesting defensive holds, an interesting play overall on the Oregon game plan. Problem is, giving up way too much, especially on their defensive side, I feel. Yeah,
I think that's the sad thing. Their attacks left a lot to be desired, and based on how they were playing, the game was probably going to go Reven's way no matter what. But Northeption giving up some of those defenses would have at least made it closer, maybe more like a 7-5 or even overtime. But Reven's defenses, excuse me, looked way more clinical than Northeption's.
We're going to have to see as well here how Northeption will try to kind of correct those mistakes. I do feel, once again, it was a lot of the same things that we saw echoed forward, at least from the smallest sample I was able to get inside of the Japan League. So hopefully this is something they're able to go back to the drawing room tonight, be like, okay, guys, we tried to play things out our normal style. That's not really working, at least against Reven. So we have to analyze things for our next opponent now, see if we need to potentially go for any more drastic changes or potentially hold it back and change, or rather make some smaller changes for their next game.
Of course, Northeption now, they do have that best of 3. It's a do or die, of course, an elimination, but they've got more than just one map to try to make this work. Minimum of 3, max of 4 in the Copenhagen Major. And of course, they'll have to win them if they want to move on in their group.
Absolutely the case. So once again, just going to be a few more moments here, ladies and gentlemen. We will have an interview ready with our winners in just a moment as well. We're going to stick with you and break things down. Actually, it looks like we're ready for that interview right now. So let's head over to the player area and congratulate our first winner of the tournament.
What's it like being on LAN here?
Well, this is like my first ever LAN event. I've just turned 18. Well, a few months ago. And I've just got into Pro League, and first stage I've made the major. Online is completely different to an online build, so I was a bit shaky getting into it, but I had a good game, so not much to complain about.
You had a good game indeed. So moving forward as well, how are you feeling about your individual performances?
Individual performances, I think we're all strong as an individual performance and team performance. We get along with each other, vibe along with each other, and stuff like that. It's good. Okay,
this is actually also the first time for you guys that you're going up against a Japanese team. So in terms of the vibe that you got, how was it?
No disrespect, but EU's better, unfortunately. But yeah.
But you're not from EU yet, though?
I'm English.
Fair enough. But yeah, that's a fair enough point. So you backing the EU boys this time around?
What, sorry?
Are you backing the EU boys?
Of course I am. Sonics are going to get a good win on them.
Okay.
I believe Citizen will go insane. He's my boy, obviously.
Okay, so I love that you're bringing up the next game, because that's also one of the talking points that I want to go into. The fact that, you're predicting Sonics coming through, you're then going to be heading up against them. So how are you feeling about that one?
I have a feeling we're going to have a good, we're so unpredictable in how we play. And I think Sonics are more of a structured team, and they play better against structured other teams, and we're not structured at all. Okay. So I think we'll come out on top.
Okay, I love those expectations. In general, looking at the whole picture of things, I mean, this is phase 1. Obviously, the goal is to be going to phase 2. Realistically, how far are you expecting yourself to be pushing it?
We're winning the major.
Okay, I love that. The confidence, let's go. Thank you so much for the time to do the interview. We are going to be heading to a quick little break, and we'll be back shortly.